Loud. Okay.
All right. So I will call this meeting to order. We are officially out of recess from the fourth board meeting on the 9th of August. It is now the 14th of August. Thank you everyone for coming on such short notice. So we're going to resume back with our regular schedule. So let me just check and make sure. So item number or motion number B56, motion to strike the long-term strategic plan steering committee. I know that we didn't get a chance to fully get back to that with amendments. So
Simon, I think we started at, we were left at 13.1 if I'm not mistaken.
Point one. That would not be correct because we went through. So what I have on
13.8. Oh, okay.
What I have on my file is that we have voted on and passed from B44 to B55. So we are stuck with the mandate letter for the executive composition.
Oh, yes. 13.8. Sorry, I was trying to find it on the agenda. We're here now.
Item 13.8, which should be, yeah, the mandate letter for the executive composition committee. Yeah, sorry, the copy that we're looking at right now is out of date. So it should be B54 on your end. It's B56 on mine from the public from my motion rolls that I have here. But I'm going to read through the item as it's listed. So whereas it is desirable for the jurisdiction and competence of the executive positions to be assessed and reorganized as it is logical and or reflective of changing realities. And whereas many executive positions have or seem to have had confusingly overlapping or contradictory competence, and whereas board resolved to constitute an advisory body to investigate the composition and duties of the executive, and whereas the VPI was so directed by the board to draft a mandate letter for the same, be it resolved that there shall be a commission according to subsections 33 to 43 of the committee's policy called the Executive Competence and Composition Commission. Be it further resolved that the nominating committee for the commissioners shall consist of the vice president internal, the speaker or deputy speaker of council, the chair or vice chair of the board, one counselor and one director selected by lottery sortition, and the director of student development non-voting. Be it further resolved that the nominating committee give its recommended nominees to council at or before the September council meeting following a public job posting on all relevant association social media sites. Be it further resolved that the attached under Appendix 1 serve as a mandate letter for this commission. So it's noted there as Appendix 1. I have it moved on my record by President Stoikos Lettieri. Of course, Chair Sims is not here. Do we have anyone to second the motion? Yep, President Lettieri.
Sorry, I already moved it. I was going to speak on it after.
Do we have anyone to second? Okay. Director Huggins Charles. Okay. I will open the floor up. And again, I'm going to try, at least with my board rules, to do a speaking list. So please put your name in the chat. That seems to be the most functional way to do it. And I will generate a speaking list that way. Of course, President Stoikos Lettieri, because you moved the motion, you have the floor.
Okay, so I know that we left off at this motion at the last board meeting, and I know that there was some chat about the nominating committee and sort of the confusion around that. The director of student development also made a recommendation. He couldn't be here today, but he recommended that it be referred to the HR subcommittee because it has fundamental issues that require some amendments, and he's looking into making those amendments with the VPI ahead of a HR subcommittee. So I agree with that recommendation, so that we don't have to do a line-by-line review today, that we can refer it to the HR subcommittee.
All right, sounds great.
I believe Chair Sims is back.
Okay. I will, I guess, yield the chair back when Chair Sims is, I guess, granted into the meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Have we meet? I guess we have reached quorum.
Yes.
Yes, we are already on 13.8.
So we're on
13.8.
13.8. I have asked that a speaking list be generated at least for the remainder of this motion. And President Stoikos-Lettieri just has the floor and has asked that we consider amending and bringing back to the HR subcommittee.
Sure, sounds good.
I will yield the chair back to you, and in the meantime, I will be taking minutes.
Fabulous. So Lily wasn't able to attend, I gather. And apologies, everyone, for being late. Yeah, a couple of unforeseen things came up, and then I couldn't get my internet to work. So,
No worries.
President Lettieri, the floor is yours.
Yes, so that was the end of what I was going to say, but if you'd like me to repeat for you, Chair Sims, I don't mind doing that. I basically just said that we left off on this motion with some confusion around the nominating committee. The Director of Student Development recommended referring it to the HR subcommittee, and the staff will make amendments ahead of that subcommittee. So I agree with that recommendation, and that's what I'll be recommending as well today.
Fabulous. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Hearing none. Just to confirm, you can't hear me.
We can hear you.
Fabulous. President Lettieri, would you like to make a motion to refer then?
Yes, I would.
Fabulous. So we've got a motion to refer this to the HR subcommittee. Is that correct?
Yes. Is it necessary to include in that motion directing the certain staff members to amend before the committee? Just because we referred a few things last time, and they weren't amended before the subcommittee, and so it caused a little bit of confusion.
So you would like staff to review, correct?
Yes, and make the necessary amendments, and then it be reviewed at the HR subcommittee.
Your motion would be then you would like to move then, I suppose, first to direct staff to review, and then following staff's review to refer to the HR subcommittee.
Yes, for a review at the HR sub. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Director Harris, do you happen to have a bit of text for that?
Like the specific text that was provided to me?
Yeah, or just anything sort of for the motion, just so that we have something in the minutes.
Yes, Chair Sims, I absolutely do it in the chat for you. It should have been provided.
Are you editing Lily's minutes?
Yes, that is correct. I have been given access. I don't think you have.
Uh-oh.
I see that President Lettieri has her hand raised.
It's great, President. Okay, I think Chair Sims is frozen. So maybe Vice Chair Harris, if you'd like to take over until Chair Sims is back.
Excellent. Okay. So yes, President Stoikos-Lettieri.
Yes, so I would just say specifically direct the VPI and Director of Student Affairs, sorry, not Student Affairs, of Student Development to, or the two staff that should review the policy.
Okay, excellent. Can you put some like the exact wording that you want in the chat?
Motion to direct the students this, or be it further resolved that the director, pardon?
Can you please write it in the chat?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
In the meantime, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the current motion that's on the floor? Any questions, comments, concerns? Now, I will note, it seems as though this kind of remedies this issue. So yes, some of the correspondence I've received on my end, and I think President Stoikos-Lettieri, you've also received on your end, is not relevant at this time, just from senior staff, and can be investigated at a later date, perhaps a September board meeting. You happen to know what I'm talking about?
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, I was just writing this.
The correspondence we received from senior staff.
Whoever's the host, if they could add my phone in,
Oh, sure, sorry.
I'd
sorry, I didn't
appreciate
see
that.
I think
there
I
we
just
go.
added you in now.
Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna finish my question and then kind of yield back. The content that was that we received as correspondence from senior staff should just be considered, I'm guessing, irrelevant, unnecessary at this time until the September board meeting. In your opinion?
For this motion specifically?
Yes. I'm specifically thinking of the correspondence from Sam Kilgore.
His correspondence also, it's just recommending it be referred to the HR subcommittee. If you would like, I could go into detail of what he mentioned.
I only asked because there was an alternate motion that was provided in that correspondence. So
Yes, he did share an alternative. I feel as though that would come with, that's why we're directing them to, that's why we're directing the Director of Student Development and the VPI to review and amend. So if they so choose, they can include those alternatives in the amendment before it reaches the HR subcommittee.
all right, thank you, President.
Do you agree, or
I would tend to agree. Now I'm gonna yield the chair back to Simpson.
Thank you. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, again, miserable internet connection. I assume we were simply then just discussing whether we want to vote on the alternative or the one that's currently presented. I believe that the motion on the floor is still President Lettieri's motion to refer. So yeah. So because that motion is still on the floor, I think we should deal with that first. Yeah.
We're starting with the motion to direct the VPI and Director of Student Development to review the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter. I just typed it in the chat. And then the second motion would be to refer item 13.8 to the HR subcommittee for review and amendment.
We can do this all in one motion.
Okay.
Yeah, and then be it further resolved that item 13.8 be referred. Do we have a seconder for this? Probably easiest for me if people just say yes, because my internet is terrible. So do we have a seconder for motion? This would be the motion to direct the VPI and Director of Student Development to review the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter and to refer item 13.8 to the HR subcommittee for review and amendment.
Yes, Carl.
All right, seconded by Director Alari. Is there any discussion on the motion? Just for clarification, it would be referring to the VPI and Director of Student Development first, and then on to the HR subcommittee. Hearing none, some of the feedback we got was that I don't need to read motions more than once. So long as everyone's confident we know what we're voting on, I will call the question.
Sorry.
Well, hold on 1 second.
Gray.
Yep.
We have,
Go ahead.
Sorry, we have we haven't read the motion out yet.
We haven't read the motion out? Okay.
Or like the new motion. Yeah, it hasn't been read out yet.
The new motion. All right.
I
So
just sent it to the chat.
a motion. We have a motion moved by President Lettieri, seconded by Director Alari, to direct the VPI and Director of Student Development to review the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter and refer item 13.8 to the HR subcommittee. Be it resolved, the Director of Student Development and VPI review and amend the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter for the HR subcommittee. And be it further resolved that item 13.8 be referred to the HR subcommittee for review, amendment, and recommendation. Is that text to your liking, President Lettieri, or would you like it? Would you like a specific date, or?
We can add to the next for the next HR subcommittee if that makes it. Yeah, let's add for the next HR subcommittee meeting.
That's probably unnecessary, but I'm just thinking if you'd like a date for it to come back to the board. But
Oh, back to the board. I don't think, I don't think that's necessary. It should come back to at the next board meeting, so.
Fine. And you are co-chair of the HR subcommittee, so I'm sure you can make sure that happens. So,
Yes.
is there any other discussion on the motion?
I'm just going to ask Chair Sims that you just give me a second so I can put this in the minutes. So I also want to ask, just for official record keeping purposes, what we have for item 13.8 is tabled.
Yes.
Technically, it does not get tabled. Once it's referred, it is tabled. So you don't have to make a motion to refer and a motion to table. You only have to make the motion to refer.
I'm specifically asking for the content of the motion. So when I'm updating the list of motions for both Davin and I's convenience, would you like me to list that as carried, tabled, or
Well, it's tabled. It's
It
tabled
would be
for
referred.
Oh,
It would
referred.
be the motion. The item would be referred to come back at a later meeting. So it's technically postponed, I suppose, but we don't vote to postpone it.
okay.
If that does that make
It's right,
sense?
referred
Sort of.
down.
We'll put that. I'm going to put that in our records as postponed, just for kind of my convenience. And
Yeah, a referral is an automatic postponement because it's being postponed
Okay.
until whoever you're referring to has the chance to review it.
understood. I just needed to know for record keeping. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. If there is no other discussion on the motion on item 13.8, I will read it once more unless there's objection. So we have a motion to direct the VPI and Director of Student Development to review the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter and refer item 13.8 to the HR Subcommittee. Be it resolved, the Director of Student Development and VPI review and amend the Executive Composition Committee mandate letter for the HR Subcommittee. And be it further resolved that item 13.8 be referred to the HR Subcommittee for review, amendment, and recommendation. I believe we can move into voting procedure. All those in favor, if you can raise your hands, or actually we can do a voice vote. If you can just say yes.
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 All right. I believe that sounded like a majority. Are there any opposed? Hearing no opposition, I believe it is carried unanimously. That can be recorded, and we can move on to item 13.9, which sort of hinges on item 13.8. So I will read the motion, but it may be in our best interest to simply postpone this. So we have a motion to moved by myself, seconded by President Lettieri, to refer schedules A to F of the CUSA bylaws to the Executive Composition Committee, whereas schedules A to F of the bylaws consist of the terms of reference for executive positions, and whereas schedules A to F have not been updated since the major democratic and corporate reforms that occurred in May 2022, and whereas the Executive Composition Committee has been struck to investigate the changes to the executive, and whereas the changes to the bylaws and any schedules therein must be made by council, be it resolved that the executive terms of reference, schedules A, B, C, D, and F, be referred to the Executive Composition Committee. The floor is now open for discussion. As the mover of the motion, I'm going to mention that this sort of hinges. We have to have an Executive Composition Committee before we can refer anything to them. So I would recommend at this point that we make a motion to postpone.
Chair Sims, I'm gonna
Yep.
I'm gonna make a motion to postpone this this motion until the September board meeting.
Yes, and
Perfect.
I'll second that.
Yes. Just give me a second.
All right.
I'm just gonna type that out in the meeting.
Absolutely.
And I'll try to read back. Motion to postpone motion feet B57. So B57A. Be it resolved that motion B57, motion to refer schedules A to F of the CUSA bylaws, the Executive Composition Committee, B57 be postponed until the September board meeting.
All right. The Vice Chair having read the motion, is there any discussion on it? Hearing none, we can do this, actually we can do this by unanimous consent. Are there any opposed to this motion as written? The motion being to refer item 13.9, or to postpone rather, to postpone item 13.9 until the September board meeting. Are there any opposed?
No, there are none. Sorry, I'll just let you know, as I know you can't see.
Perfect. Hearing no opposition, that motion passes unanimously. And we can move on to item 1310, which is the motion to strike the Long-Term Strategic Planning Steering Committee. Whereas the CUSA Board of Directors passed motion B49, the motion to approve the Long-Term Strategic Plan Policy O-01 at the fourth meeting of the CUSA Board, that's this one. And whereas Section 4 of the Long-Term Strategic Plan Policy O-01 requires that a standing committee acting under the committee's policy, known as the Long-Term Strategic Plan Steering Committee, be constituted, be it resolved that the CUSA Board of Directors strike the Long-Term Strategic Plan Steering Committee. This is moved by President Lettieri and seconded by Director Harris. President Lettieri, as the mover of the motion, you get to speak first.
Yes, so this policy was written by the VPI, the policy analyst, and myself. And I think that it's pretty straightforward. It identifies the next steps for the committee. It identifies some goals for the committee, not to say goals for CUSA, as the committee will be creating those goals. It also, I know we mentioned this at the last board meeting, but it does outline one of the next steps to being, creating those long-term goals and sort of working off of those goals when creating our long-term strategic plan. And it involves all the different actors from board level, council level, executive, staff. So it sort of encompasses all the different areas that we'll need to consider when we are creating a long-term strategic plan. And I will say I'm very excited for this. I'll just admit, Chair Sims, I'm very excited for this. This is something that CUSA, really needs and something that can really shape the way forward for this association. So I'm excited to start this, and I guess I recommend today that we approve this motion, or approve this long-term strategic plan steering committee.
Wonderful. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
I'm gonna be very, there's been a lot of conversations, Chair Sims, that have happened behind closed doors between other directors and myself and staff, executives, about things that have been missing from the board, whether it's regimes, protocols in place, some glaring issues. But of course, as a board of directors, one of the biggest things that kind of jumped out was the long-term strategic plan. And as somebody who's come off of a number of boards, including school boards and management boards of in my previous lives, where we've had 4 or 5 years strategic plans, not having one is just bad enough. I'm so happy that we can actually put together a steering committee and kind of work towards this, be a coherent organization.
Thank you, Director Harris. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Hearing none, I'll just take the opportunity to speak to it myself. I absolutely agree with both President Lettieri and Director Harris. The fact that we haven't had a long-term strategic plan for a corporation of this size is extremely concerning. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the process unfolds. I mean, this year will just be the start. Seeing how this, again, setting precedent. I think we are a precedent-setting board. Seeing how this looks 10, 15, 20 years from now, when that will be the result of 4 or 5 strategic plans, will be extremely exciting to see. If there is no other discussion on the motion, this is simply the motion to strike the long-term strategic plan steering committee. Would anyone like me to reread the motion? Hearing no desire, we can move into voting procedure. All those in favor, I think I have internet enough if you can raise your hands. That is unanimous. Item 1310 passes unanimously. Moving on to item 1311, which is the motion to fill the long-term strategic plan steering committee. Whereas the CUSA Board of Directors passed motion B49, motion to approve the long-term strategic plan policy O-01 at the 4th meeting of the CUSA Board. And whereas section 5 of the long-term strategic plan policy O-01 outlines that the composition of the long-term strategic plan steering committee consists of A, the chair of the board, B, the vice chair of the board, C, 2 directors elected by the board, D, 2 councillors selected by council, E, president CEO, F, vice president finance, G, vice president internal, H, the executive director, non-voting, I, the director of finance and administration, non-voting, J, the director of student development, non-voting, K, the director of communications and strategy, non-voting, and L, the director of student services, non-voting. Be it resolved that the CUSA Board of Directors fill the long-term strategic plan steering committee. Be it further resolved that the CUSA Board of Directors elect the following directors to serve as board representatives of the long-term strategic plan steering committee. So we can now move into nominating procedure. Nominations are now in order for the 2 director positions. You can either self-nominate or nominate someone else, preferably not myself, Director Harris, or the president, as we already sit on the committee. And this is one of those times you do not have to be recognized by the chair. You can simply yell out me or yell out someone else's name.
Director Huggins-Charles, I'd like to nominate myself.
All right, we've got a nomination from Director Huggins-Charles. Do we have any other nominations, self-nominations, or nominations of other individuals at this time? It'll be fun. You'll be working with Simon, Anastasia, and I. Johannes.
And Johannes.
Yeah.
What's not to
If
love?
there is, pardon?
I said, what's not to love? Hold on.
Exactly. If there is no other interest at
I
this
will
time,
nominate myself if it's not too late. Dr. Alari here.
all right, Director Alari. Is there are there any other nominations, which pretty much just leaves Director Zaitlin, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm okay, thank you. I second both Director Huggins-Charles and Director Alari.
Fabulous. With that, it simply becomes a motion. If there are there any other nominations? Right. Director Matthews simply not being here is not eligible. Well, could have nominated herself prior, but is not eligible for nominations now. So hearing no further nominations, it's simply a vote whether to approve or to reject the nominations, because we don't have more than 2. I suppose technically I should ask Director Huggins-Charles and Director Alari if you could either not vote. I don't think we have to actually ask you to leave the room, but we can ask you to step aside. We will retain quorum by virtue of the fact that because you both have a conflict of interest, the remaining members, even though they do not constitute a quorum, they constitute, we do not lose quorum because of that. All right. So we have a vote on the table. We can simply pass this by unanimous consent. Are there any opposed to Director Huggins-Charles and Director Alari being elected to the Long-Term Strategic Plan Steering Committee? Hearing no opposition, which is not unsurprising, or which is not surprising. Congratulations, Director Huggins-Charles and Director Alari. You are now certainly in the motion. We now have to actually move and second the motion, item 1311. Would the board prefer that I read the entire motion or just the final, be it further resolved with the 2 names in it?
I think just the final, be it resolved. Further resolved.
So nothing has changed except for the final, be it further resolved that the CUSA Board of Directors elect the following directors to serve as board representatives of the Long-Term Strategic Plan Steering Committee, Director Huggins-Charles and Director Alari. This motion is moved by President Strykos-Lettieri and seconded by Director Harris. Is there any discussion on this motion? President Lettieri, you have you've moved the motion, so you can speak first if you like.
No discussion. I think that the 2 directors that were nominated will do a wonderful job.
I'd just like to echo that, and again, I mean, like item 1310, it's very exciting to see the long-term strategic plan moving forward. This one, I don't think, Director O'Leary and Director Huggins-Charles, I don't think you have to step back for because you have been nominated by the rest of the board. So we can move into voting procedure unless there is any other debate. Hearing none. All those in favor, if you can please raise your hands. All right, and that is unanimous. That passes unanimously. Moving along to item 1312, the motion to sponsor CU Spirit Day. This is a long one. Hold on to your hats.
Sorry.
Whereas CU Spirit Day is an annual collaboration between the Carleton University Students Association, Advancement, Athletics, Housing and Residence Life, and the Student Experience Office. The partnership between the 5 stakeholders has involved the sponsorship of apparel items for different individual departments or divisions. And whereas the partnership's lead sponsor is rotated annually between the 5 stakeholders, this year's sponsorship being Advancement, and as next year's main sponsor, CUSA, will influence how $25,000 is allocated. And whereas the program has been highly successful at building campus pride and raising and supporting student initiatives, throughout the life of the program, CUSA and its partners raised over $100,000 to support Carleton's community priorities. Last year's campaign, under the selection of Housing and Residence Life, sold 5,500 sweaters and joggers, raising $25,000 to support bursaries for Indigenous students living on campus. And whereas this year's apparel selection is a high-quality crew neck available in the classic black Ravens or the true red Carleton design, which will continue to be priced at a student-friendly $20. And whereas historically CUSA has sponsored sweaters for all professional and student staff in its operations, charging the cost of each sweater to CUSA's staff appreciation budget line, CUSA has further offered discounts at Rooster's Coffee House and Ollie's to those who wear CU apparel on Fridays. And whereas Rooster's Coffee House and Ollie's Pub have agreed to continue providing discounts to those who wear CU apparel on Fridays. And whereas last year Carleton staff, students, and faculty showed campus pride and developed a sense of unity through distance learning by wearing CU apparel on Fridays. And whereas CUSA aims to launch our pickup in August from the Student Experience Office to prepare for CU Spirit Day's Fall 2022 launch. Be it resolved that CUSA continue to sponsor sweaters for all of our professional and student staff. Be it further resolved that Roosters and Ollie's continue to provide discounts on Fridays for anyone wearing CU apparel. And be it further resolved that the President and Executive Director draft a plan to allocate the $25,000 next year and present it to the Board by April 2023 for approval. This motion has been moved by President Lettieri and seconded by Director Huggins-Charles. That got into the agenda backwards. President Lettieri, as the mover, you can speak first to this.
Yes, so this is just a very basic motion. We have sponsored this for many years. And it's just a great way to show some staff appreciation to our student and, full-time staff. And essentially the part about, and also, Roosters and Ollie's have agreed to continue providing those discounts. I believe it's something like a 10% discount, something of that nature. And essentially the reason why we'd be drafting a plan to allocate the $25K for next year and present it to the board is because we at the Finance and Governance Subcommittee, we have changed our budget procedure to be preparing a budget for the following year. So come the winter semester, our team will be preparing a second budget for next year, and this would be a part of that budget. So we would have to make that decision, and I believe that's a decision that requires board level approval. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a large amount, and it's something that should be strategically invested, whether that be into one of our service centers or whatnot. Yeah, so that's essentially why that last be it further resolved is there. I did originally write April 2023 just for time, because I'm not sure exactly when we'll be creating the new budget, but it'll likely be earlier than that.
So this board will have been dissolved. Any of us who are one-year directors will not be there for April 2023, which is a bit of a scary thought, but
yeah, by April 2023, I mean like the last day of all our terms. Yeah,
absolutely.
We'll still be here April 2023. It's May 2023.
Yeah, some will.
May 2023.
You will. Directors Aitlin, Huggins-Charles, and myself, we will all be merely memories by then.
On May 1st, 2023, will we?
No, it's the annual general
Yes,
meeting,
Annual general meeting.
which happens
I take that back.
in March.
I take that
Anyway, small sideline there. Is there any other discussion on the motion? Director Huggins-Charles.
Yeah, I was just going to say this is one of the motions that the Finance and Governance Subcommittee voted on to recommend to the board for approval. So yeah, we unanimously agree that the board should approve this motion. So I was just giving notice of that.
Fabulous. Just for my own understanding, the ultimate action items of this is that we're just going to continue sponsoring sweaters and the drafting of the plan, correct?
And you know, the approval of Roosters and Ollie's discount.
Perfect.
Yep.
Is there any other discussion on item 1312? Hearing none, unless someone's confused, I'm not going to read the motion again. Unless, if anyone would like me to read the motion, I will, but hearing no desire and having no desire, we can move into voting procedure. All those in favor, if you can please raise your hands. I have my hand raised as well, so that motion passes unanimously. We can move on now to item 1313. Motion to approve a joint review of President CEO compensation by the Finance and Governance Subcommittee and the Human Resources Subcommittee. Whereas the Finance and Governance Subcommittee was asked through motion B35, motion to refer the draft compensation policy to the Finance and Governance Subcommittee of the CUSA Board to review the President's current compensation scheme as relative to VP compensation. And whereas it is important to look at this issue expeditiously with consideration to HR and equity, and whereas according to current policies, executive compensation appears to be under the purview of the Compensation Review Committee. And whereas the Finance and Governance Subcommittee is unsure whether the creation of the Compensation Review Subcommittee was approved by the former Board of Trustees or Board of Directors, and is therefore unsure whether the Finance and Governance Subcommittee has jurisdiction to make recommendations on this issue, be it resolved that the Finance and Governance Subcommittee recommends the Board mandates the Finance and Governance Subcommittee and the Human Resources Subcommittee to jointly study the issue of President's compensation and return with a recommendation to the Board and or Council. This has been moved by Director Huggins-Charles, again, backwards there, and seconded by Director O'Leary. This is Director Huggins-Charles's right to speak. Director Harris, did you have a procedural question?
Yes, it's just more of a question, I guess, on the content of the motion, just concerning like a potential conflict of interest for the president.
Okay. I believe I could entertain that before we get into discussion.
Okay. Now this is just more of a question on the content of the motion. Is this for is this something to be taking into effect in May 2023? Because if so, then I guess the president can stay to speak, but if not, then there would be a perceived conflict of interest.
I will give that to Director Huggins-Charles. Question.
Well, yeah, I believe Anastasia would have a conflict of interest because, well, I would want to explain what the committee received, but part of it was also would affect her current compensation, so I believe she would have a conflict of interest.
President Leturi, are you declaring a conflict of interest? Is that what
Yes.
why your hand is up?
Yes, yeah. And I was just, I'm not sure if I would have to leave the meeting, but I'm recording it. So if necessary, I can just turn off my camera, mute, and turn off the volume, and then somebody can text me when you're done.
What you can
Sure. I mean,
you can transfer the meeting ownership to me.
Will it still record because it's recording on my cloud?
True. I guess then for yeah. Okay.
What I would simply request is that you mute yourself and turn off your volume, and simply once you've declared a conflict of interest, although technically you would be asked to leave the room so long as you're not participating in the discussion and not influencing the discussion, I see no problem in your computer staying connected to the meeting.
Okay, why doesn't somebody just send a message in the chat then, letting me know, because I won't have the volume on, so I won't be able to hear. So just letting me know when I can turn it back on.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. All right, lots of discussion, but Director Huggins-Charles, the floor is now yours to discuss the motion.
Yes, so at the last Finance and Governance Subcommittee meeting, we received a proposal that expressed that there may be a concern that the president isn't being fully compensated on the same level as the VPs. So we had a discussion. There was some concern. There was some concern in us reviewing it because we could not find any explicit policy or any explicit procedure concerning who is responsible to review presidential, well, at least executive compensation. We were aware that there is a compensation review subcommittee, but as the motion states, we were also concerned that it wasn't clear whether or not that subcommittee was properly constituted, because we couldn't find any past minutes where that was, where we couldn't find any past minutes where we could find that the subcommittee was constituted. And I think we also felt that the issue of executive compensation would at least be dealt with by the board. But because of those myriad of issues, and because of the fact that we didn't have a lot of the information that we needed, we felt that we needed to come to the board to ask for a mandate, because it also isn't specific in our terms of reference, about us having the ability to simply either make changes to executive compensation, or for us to actually start reviewing things like that. So we brought this motion to the board for us to get a mandate to actually review all of these things. And because it also is a human resources issue, we wanted to also include the Human Resources Subcommittee in this review of compensation. And we felt that if in reality it is a matter for council to deal with, that again, because executive compensation, we felt should be an issue that the board deals with, we would like to be able to either give a recommendation to council on making a change, or if it is something that the board could deal with, we just go through the normal procedure of making a recommendation to the board.
Fabulous, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Or is there any further discussion? My only question is, and I think you touched on this a little bit, we are certain that it is board jurisdiction and not council jurisdiction, correct? Director Huggins-Charles?
No, that was one of the issues that we couldn't find any definite information on.
Chair Sims.
Yes, Director Harris.
Yes, I think just based on general practice, if we even want to read in as a board, it's generally been of the understanding that vice presidential elections management policy falls under council jurisdiction, whereas presidential stuff tends to fall under board jurisdiction.
I believe so. I did actually pull up the bylaws just to check on this, and this is something that can be discussed at the subcommittee level, but the board jurisdiction does have supervision and management of the corporation with a focus on human resources, labor management, relations, internal controls, blah, 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 blah. Essentially, any policy or procedure that is not herein delegated to council. So we're sort of the flip of the Canadian Constitution. So I think that we certainly would have, I think we can take jurisdiction unless there's any opposition from council. Director Zaitlin.
Yeah, sorry to jump in the middle. My only question was because, and this is from my memory, so please correct me if I'm wrong, Director Huggins-Charles, but part of the discussion at the Governance and Finance Subcommittee was that there was record of the nomination of a compensation review committee at the council level, but we were not sure if that had ever been struck. So I was wondering if Gray or Simon, with your experience on council, do you have insight as to whether that was struck? Because if so, it has been mandated to council, but if it hasn't, then I guess it goes back to us.
I will say I have not been on council, so I will yield this over to Chair Sims.
I am fairly confident that we never constituted a compensation review subcommittee last year. So anything that happened, besides anything that happened last year, would have changed because of the major corporate structural shifts that happened on May 1st. It's possible that a compensation review subcommittee was passed in that omnibus or that large overhaul of the committee's policy. However, that committee's policy has not yet been approved by the board, meaning that anything in that committee's policy has not yet taken effect.
Chair Sims, point of information.
Yes.
I am just taking a look through the CUSA website right now. So not only has a compensation review committee subcommittee been struck, but it has also been filled. And it is under finance, fees, and funds.
So that is one of those committees that technically does not have any. We'll need to send a message to Davin and just say, hold your horses here, because compensation review, it'll depend on what the Constitution and Policy Review Committee comes back with, whose jurisdiction that falls under. But technically, because the board has not approved that committee's policy, that committee technically has no right to exist. And I don't say that as it has no right to exist, as in it has no. It needs to be passed by both board and council before it has legitimacy to exist and act.
My only concern with that is that there are current committees that are already acting, and subcommittees that are already acting. So I don't know if that's a precedent that we want to set.
Which precedent would that be, Director Harris? The precedent that
specifically that there are already committees and subcommittees that are already acting and passing motions as it is, that the current structure hasn't been, I guess, created by by the committee's policy. What I would suggest in that case then is that this gets sent to a joint jurisdictional issues committee meeting. This issue rather than CPRC.
That may, that may be the sensible thing to actually send this motion, or to ask the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee for their recommendation on President and CEO compensation.
Yeah, what I would suggest is that we actually send over a two-part question. We ask if this is a valid thing to be sending. And if we have the authority to be covering this, and number two, if that is the case, and if number one is yes, is it valid to have a compensation review subcommittee at the council level?
Council level.
And if so, what that would look like.
Director Zaitlin?
Apologies if this is still me just getting my footing in how CUSA works, but has the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee been struck properly if the board never approved the omnibus bill that would authorize the striking of all of those committees, or was that one that was like pre-approved or not included in that?
That was approved by council and the board. So that's
I'm just forgetting that. Thank you.
That was first approved by the board and then approved by council. But at the same time as the council approved the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee, they also made a bunch of other changes that have not gone through the board yet. Yes, the wonders of a dual chamber system. Director Harris, if you wouldn't mind, you seem to have a handle on what exactly you'd like the wording to read for that.
Like for the questions of the
mind?
Jurisdictional Issues Committee, or for an amendment?
Yes. Would you mind? Pardon me?
The amendment or the question?
I guess the question that we would like to ask the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee.
Okay, can I type that in the chat as we continue discussion then?
Sure.
Okay.
Or into the minutes or wherever you'd like. So I think, is there any further discussion on this, or are we sort of settled that we'd like to simply send the matter to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee and see, find out who exactly has? Yeah, it seems like that's sort of the consensus.
I don't know
Yeah,
if you
I
can
mean,
see
the
Ray,
bond-
but people are nodding.
I can, yes. So, yeah, I'm going to guess that they will probably say that it is board jurisdiction, because financial matters fall under board. Then again, technically the executive budget falls under council's jurisdiction, and the executives are perhaps paid out of the executive budget. I'm not sure. So we'll find out. It may actually be an issue of council's responsibility, simply because the executive budget is under council. So that will be something that will get deliberated then. Director O'Larry.
Yes, recall also being an issue of conflict of interest with council and executive being able to man or modify their compensation. So I think there was discussions at the subcommittee level about that as well.
I would say it's probably more correct for us to do it, but Director Huggins-Charles.
Oh, no, sorry, never mind.
Oh, sorry, I just saw your hand poke up. I thought. It's again this all these interesting things happening right soon here. All right. Okay. I've just seen in the chat from Director Harris, does the board have clear authority over the executive compensation issues and the composition of compensation packages?
If question 1 is in the affirmative, is the compensation review subcommittee unconstitutional?
Yeah. Please.
So in this case, then, I'm wondering if we can, Chair Sims, bring forward a motion, or B61A, so an amendment to this motion. Be it resolved that motion B61 be postponed until the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee can answer the following questions. Be it further resolved that the following questions be referred to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee. Something like that.
It can either be that, or again, it does not have to be postponed. It can simply be the be it resolved could simply read, be it resolved that the Finance and Governance Subcommittee, or be it resolved that the board refer this issue to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee. Could simply be the final be it resolved, and then we could also pass a motion with our questions, or our questions could accompany this item. So the item would sort of be, here's our issue of debate, but here's our questions about them.
So I'm not sure. That's not clear to me. I don't know if that's clear for other directors. Because
was that an affirmative? Yes, it's unclear, or yes, it's not unclear, Director Zaitlin?
I think I got it.
okay.
Okay.
Are you referring the questions being sent to the Joint Jurisdictional Committee, or is it if they say yes and it's brought back to the board, then the things we're talking about would be included in the motion we would be discussing?
Is that question to myself or to?
No, to Chair Sims, sorry.
Can you? I better get you to repeat that. I want to make sure I answer it exactly correctly.
I was also confused when you were speaking about the questions that would be included in the motion. Was that in reference to whatever would be sent to the joint jurisdictional jurisdictional issues committee?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So what we could do is we could move. Actually, we could simply just refer the entire motion. We don't have to amend it. We could refer the entire motion to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee and accompany our referral with our questions.
Okay. All right then.
So the motion.
I will write that into the minutes as you continue to speak, Kirsten.
Okay. So the motion would be something along the lines of motion to refer. Yeah, we'd make a motion to refer, and then we'd have a second, be it further resolved that the board seeks clarity on the following two questions, and then that would be questions 1 and 2.
All right, just give me 1 second. I'm going to put it into the public board meeting minutes. Be it resolved that motion 61. Motion 2. No, stop. There you go. Joint jurisdictional issues committee. Be it further resolved that accompanying motion B61, the board of directors refer the following questions. It's already up there.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, it's okay.
I cannot read.
Just give me a second to format. The board of directors refer the following questions for consideration. And for not for consideration, I'm thinking for ruling.
For clarification. Okay, good.
All right, and then I'm gonna just post those in, and then the motion will be good.
Perfect. Technically, we don't have a mover and a seconder yet, but that's all right.
I will move the motion or the amendment.
I can second it.
Seconded by Director Zayton. I can throw that in at the bottom, Simon, if you like.
I got it. Don't worry about it.
Perfect. All right, so we have a motion now pertaining to item 1313, moved by Director Harrison, seconded by Director Zaitlin, to refer motion B61, the motion to approve a joint review of President CEO compensation by the Finance and Governance Subcommittee and the Human Resources Subcommittee. Be it resolved that motion B61, motion to approve a joint review of President CEO compensation by the Finance and Governance Subcommittee and the Human Resources Subcommittee, be referred to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee, the JGIC. Be it further resolved that accompanying motion B61, the Board of Directors refer the following questions for clarification by the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee. 1, does the Board of Directors have clear authority over the executive compensation issues and the composition of compensation packages? And 2, if question 1 is in the affirmative, is the Compensation Review Subcommittee unconstitutional? Is that wording to your liking, Directors Harris and Zaitlin?
That'd be correct, yes.
Perfect. So we can move into some discussion. Is there any discussion on this? from my own perspective, I think this is a good use of the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee. I think we always knew that compensation was going to become an issue of jurisdiction, and I'm pleased to see that that at least this will be going to them, and there will be some sort of clear recommendation, and the board won't be acting either out of its jurisdiction, or at least the council won't feel like the board is infringing on its jurisdiction if indeed the board has jurisdiction over this. So I certainly am in support of referring it to the GGIC. All right. Is there any other discussion on this? All right. Unless you would like me to read the motion over again. We can move into voting procedure. All those in favor, if you can please raise your hands. My hand is raised behind my muted camera. That is unanimous. So that motion B61 will be referred to the Joint Jurisdictional Issues Committee. And we'll see what they come back with.
I will
Just wait
text
for it.
Anastasia as well in case she's left the room.
You just sent her a text. We're all good.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And I don't have cell reception, so I can't send a text to anyone.
Was it that you have cell reception, but you can see our motions?
Pardon?
Question. And how is it that you don't have you have bad cell reception, but you can see that we're raising our hands?
Oh, so I have internet now, sort of, but I have bad cell reception. Our TELUS has been so miserable that even our home phone hasn't been working terribly well.
Wow.
I only get cell reception if I'm standing in front of one window in the house. Yeah, it's.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. The CTRC, Canadian Radio and Television Commission, spent like $4 billion to improve rural internet, and we have not seen one iota of improvement. So.
Okay. All right.
Anyway, bringing myself back into germane comments. Welcome back, President Lettieri. We move now to item 1314, the motion to draft proposal for space allocation on the first floor University Centre. This is motion B62. Whereas the INS has vacated rooms 132 and 132A, leaving CUSA with a large 1,907 square foot vacant space on the first floor of the University Centre. And whereas CUSA has not yet identified a use for this vacant space in the UC. And whereas the space should come into use in winter 2023, construction should commence in the near future, be it resolved that the Executive Council prepare 1 to 2 proposals for the use of the vacant space and present them at an early fall 2022 board meeting. Be it further resolved that the board approve one of these proposals at an early fall 2022 board meeting. That's moved by President Lettieri and seconded by Vice Chair Harris. President Lettieri is the mover. Unless there's any procedural questions, you have the floor first.
Thank you. I know that we were sort of supposed to have those proposals for this board meeting. However, we're still in discussions and, coordinating some new ideas with the university that have sort of delayed this process, but hoping to use this as a, push to get that done by the early fall so that we can make a decision and begin construction to hopefully open that new space for the winter semester. And that is the reason for the dated, be it further resolved. But I think we've already gone into discussion about the need for the space allocation. So I think it's pretty basic, just confirming what needs to be done.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? The only thing I have sort of issue with is the final be it for the resolved, and I know actually Sam in his email to you and Simon and I, Anastasia, he mentioned this. The final be it further resolved, I'm a bit uncomfortable if we give ourselves a time restraint. If we only get the proposals by the next meeting, and if deliberation on those happens to go for a very long time, we may want to take another month. I realize that the time limit is obviously we're under a bit of a time crunch, but I think perhaps requiring ourselves to approve one of those proposals. Frankly, I mean, if we get proposals, we'll discuss the proposals and we'll vote on the proposals. The final be it further resolved is probably not essential, and it may actually be creating more complexity for us than it deserves, or than we deserve to make for ourselves. So, President Lettieri.
Yeah, I would just say that the reason why we did include it in this motion, and I do understand that concern, but the reason why it's been included is because, you know, that's a large space that you know, we're paying to rent and isn't being used, and so there is a level of urgency in you know, approving one of those proposals, and it's because it says early fall that, you know, that could be September, October, whether they come in September and they're approved October, just really like giving enough time in the fall semester to begin construction, right? If we leave it to late fall, we won't have anything in this space for the entire year.
Director Harris, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I was going to raise essentially the exact same points that President Lettieri raised, that there is a little bit of urgency with this, but I'm not gonna repeat what's already been said.
I think just my own concerns. So long as we don't require ourselves to make a decision before we're all fully comfortable with making a decision, I'm perfectly happy to leave the text in. President Lettieri.
And I'm sure if we come to that date and an amendment needs to be made, we can rediscuss it if that's necessary. I think this just really provides a level of urgency, not only to the board members when these proposals come in, but also to the staff who are working behind the scenes, and just a level of, you know, this is a top priority right now, and it really does need to be.
Perfect. Is there any other discussion on the motion? This is essentially just, directing Executive Council. No action item from us, which is always nice. Is there any further discussion on this? Seeing and hearing none, we can move into voting procedure. On the motion to draft a proposal for space allocation in the first floor University Centre, I'm not going to read the motion unless someone requests me to. This is moved by President Lettieri, seconded by Director Harris. All those in favor, if you can raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Again, my hand is raised behind my muted camera. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item 1315. Motion to draft a proposal for The Wing 2022/23, whereas room 480B, The Wing, is not in use, leaving a 12,084 square foot space unoccupied, and whereas CUSA aims to utilize the vacant space to deliver student services and or an operational business in the fall of 2022. However, the association has not yet identified a use for The Wing. Be it resolved that the Vice President of Finance and the President assess the financial history of The Wing. Be it further resolved that the Vice President of Finance, President, Executive Director, and Director of Communications and Strategy present a proposal for the use of The Wing at an early fall 2022 board meeting. This proposal will include a business plan or an alternate plan for use if CUSA is no longer to operate a business in The Wing. Be it further resolved that the board approve a proposal at an early fall 2022 board meeting. This is moved by President Lettieri and seconded by Director Harris. President Lettieri, as mover, you get to speak first.
Sure. So just as a little bit of context, the Wing is the location in the University Center outside of Roosters, sort of, you know, in between where the Starbucks is and where Roosters is. And we used to have a business there. I believe we outsourced and we no longer do. I believe that space is currently perhaps being used for tabling, but we have identified, you know, there are various different ideas flowing around, but we've identified that there does need to be some sort of plan for how the wing will be used, how to maximize that space. You know, if it's not a business, what will it be? We have varying needs, you know, some that might not be addressed when we make a proposal for the other space that we just approved. You know, some of those needs may not be addressed there, and perhaps they can be addressed in this space. So again, this is another one that's, a level of urgency. We do want to have something, some form of a clear plan for the year. Having a vacant space is not ever ideal, considering the amount of students we serve, the amount of space that we need for our daily, operations and for the services that we provide. So it's really not ideal to have vacant space. And again, I would say these two, this motion and the last one are quite urgent and need to be a priority.
Thank you, President Lettieri. Is there any other debate or discussion on this? I'm just going to ask my own question. I mean, this is essentially exactly the same as the previous motion, just for a different space, correct?
Correct. Yeah. However, though, I suppose the only difference here is that the last motion was for the executive council to come up with a plan for the INS space. And this one is the VPF, President, Executive Director, Director of Communications and Strategy. It's just because that's the four of us who have been working on it. I don't know if you'd like to include or amend that to include the Executive Council. I'm not really quite sure if consent needs to be had throughout the executive team and senior management. I'm sure, even if we don't necessarily bring it as an executive council, it could be, anybody could speak on it in the future. I don't specifically know why it doesn't say executive council, but I don't think it's too big of an issue because we'll run it by them anyways. But yeah, essentially it's the same thing.
Would just as a response to that, I would suggest that it's prudent to run it by them, but it's probably unnecessary for us to explicitly state that they need to be consulted, assuming, of course, that the four of you will actually consult naturally, which would be expected anyway.
Of course.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we have the motion to draft a proposal for the wing 2022-23 plan, moved by President Lettieri, seconded by Director Harris. If there's no opposition to moving into voting procedure, we can do so now. All those in favor of the motion, if you can raise your hands. My hand is raised as well. That is, again, a motion that passes unanimously. We're rocketing through these. All right. Item 1316, the motion to approve the disconnecting from work policy H-04, whereas the Ontario provincial government has passed Bill 27, Working for Workers Act 2021, an amendment to the Employment Standards Act 2000, which requires employers to have a written policy on disconnecting from work in place for all employees. And whereas the CUSA Board of Directors passed motion B37, the motion to direct the Human Resources Committee to draft a written policy on disconnecting from work at the third meeting of the CUSA Board. And whereas the Human Resources Subcommittee has recommended that the disconnecting from work policy H-04 attached under Appendix 1 of this motion be passed by the CUSA Board of Directors. Be it resolved that the disconnecting from work policy H-04 be approved by the Board of Directors as written. This is moved by Director Harris and seconded by myself. Director Harris, you have the floor to speak on this. I'm also willing to speak if you'd like.
There's not much to say about this. The one thing I will say is that it does not matter which policy we put into place, so long as we have something, we're technically in compliance with provincial law. This does have to be circulated within a certain amount of days. I think it is 60 to 90, and especially to new workers with CUSA. I will take a look right now. This has been like extensively reviewed with both management, with senior management in the union, specifically 3011 of full-time staff. I think it's been beat to death at HR subcommittee and honestly should be approved as written.
President Lettieri. I'll just say our policy analyst worked on this policy, with the legislation that's available. It was reviewed by staff and executives prior to being at the Human Resources Subcommittee, and the as stated here, the Human Resources Subcommittee. This is one of the motions that we did recommend. So exactly, I recommend that it be approved as written as well. It was even amended and reviewed at the HR subcommittee as well. So yeah.
Dr. Harris?
I will just suggest as well that technically, if we do not pass this motion today, we will be out of compliance with provincial law, which required that actually we passed this last month. So I would suggest that we pass this immediately. Thank you. That's all.
President Lettieri?
Yes, I'll agree with that and touch on it a bit more. It was actually a staff member who brought it to our attention, a month ago I believe, but right before the last board meeting, when we directed, staff to write this policy. But it's a very straightforward policy. It follows what's required in legislation to be in compliance, but it also has really important exemptions and things, because we do have to remember that as a students association, we do have varying work hours. A lot of times our staff are permitted to work outside of regular work hours, such as in the evenings. And not only and on the weekends, and that doesn't only apply to, for example, our executives or our executive adjacent or even our senior staff, but other student staff as well. And for example, this meeting would not technically be a part of the, be approved from the disconnecting from work policy for myself to be here. But that's why we had to include exemptions. And so we really clearly went over those with the help of the executive director, who really identified which areas needed to specifically be clarified in terms of, our specific hour standard, and then also just to make sure that it was in compliance with our collective bargaining agreements as well. So that, and making sure not to write anything like, regular 9 to 5 hours, because those hours are dictated by our collective agreements, vary, and you don't want to have a policy that I guess it directly goes against the collective bargaining. So all of those considerations were taken into place, and it's ready for approval. Yeah.
The one thing
Student thoughts on what you just said, but made me happy to hear you talk about policy. Director Harris.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, on the board minutes, I don't know if this is the same with the agenda. The appendix is still the executive policy for some reason, so I will fix that. That's all. There you go.
Actually, the PDF that I have that's actually quite outdated is correct. So.
And it's just the minutes then. Perfect.
Is there any further discussion on this? I don't mean to beat the subject to death, but I reviewed it with the DHR subcommittee and found the same thing that both President Lettieri and Director Harris have said. This has been, I think, thoroughly reviewed. If there is no further discussion, we have the motion moved by Director Harris and seconded by myself to approve the disconnecting from work policy H04. Unless someone wants me to read the motion, we can move into voting procedure. Hearing no desire for that, all those in favor, if you can please raise your hands. Right, and that is, with my hand raised as well, another unanimously passed motion. Moving on, we've got two left. Moving on to item 1317, the motion to approve the hybrid work policy. Whereas the CUSA Board of Directors passed motion B33, motion to refer hybrid work policy to the Human Resources Subcommittee of the CUSA Board at the third meeting of the CUSA Board. And whereas the Human Resources Subcommittee has recommended that the hybrid work policy, HXX, be attached under Appendix 1 of this motion, be passed by the CUSA Board of Directors. Be it resolved that the hybrid work policy be approved by the Board of Directors as written. That's moved by myself and seconded by Vice Chair Harris. So as mover of the motion, I'll just speak to it extremely briefly. This was something that I believe was written and was a really poor policy. So just the HR subcommittee has had the chance to go over it. And actually what we ultimately did, we didn't have enough time to go over it fully, so we did refer it to the executive director and the director of finance administration, who have also had their chance to go through it. President Lettieri.
Sorry, I sent it in an email, but I don't think maybe you received it this morning. But actually, that's not true. They didn't get a chance to review it, unfortunately. So essentially, I'm just recommending that we refer this. I'm sorry for everybody who's at the committee that we referred it here, but I'm now recommending that we refer it back to the Human Resources Subcommittee so that we can review it once the Executive Director and Director of Finance and Administration review the policy. I actually connected with the Executive Director this morning and confirmed that it's not ready yet, and it does need a little bit more work. Yeah, the context is essentially that it was written and passed sort of with a blind eye previously, and it needs some work. But yeah, so I'm just recommending that or I guess I'll put a motion to refer it to the HR subcommittee. Sorry about that, Gray.
Oh, that's I was under the I was under the impression that that it had been finished because I saw all their comments in there, but I wasn't aware that they hadn't managed to finish their review.
Didn't. I think they started their review, but I don't believe that they finished. Yeah, well, that's the confirmation I received this morning. So, because I did go to check this morning just to make sure we were all prepared with all the items on today's agenda, but that this one is not yet to be approved. So I'll just do a motion to refer this back to the Human Resources Subcommittee once it's been reviewed and amended by the Executive Director and Director of Finance and Administration.
Is that a seconding, Director Harris?
It is a seconding, but it's also a quick comment and I guess a question for the wording, just for the record. If you would like, President Lettieri, I can literally just copy and paste what I did with JJIC and then change around the wording. So
with what? Sorry.
I can like, just for record, are you okay with the motion being motion to refer motion B65 to the Human Resources Subcommittee? Be it resolved that motion B65 be referred to the Human Resources Subcommittee?
Yeah, it's fine.
Perfect.
All right. Having the motion read by Director Harris, which is, I assume, how the text will be written. We know what we're voting on. That has been moved and seconded by President Lettieri and Director Harris.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
The only thing I might suggest, Simon, is, but maybe not necessary. At the very end, just, like you said, where be it resolved, ... once it's been reviewed by the Executive Director and Director of Finance and Administration, just so that, they know they need to to review and amend.
All right. Once policy, once the hybrid work policy H-XX, because there's no number assigned yet, is fully reviewed by the Executive Director and who?
Director of Finance and Administration. I keep wanting to say Finance and HR, but it's Finance and Administration.
All right, I will just read the motion out for perfect clarity. So we have the motion moved by President Lettieri, seconded by Director Harris, to refer motion B65, motion to approve the hybrid work policy, to the Human Resources Subcommittee. Be it resolved that motion B65, motion to approve the hybrid work policy, be referred to the Human Resources Subcommittee once the hybrid work policy is fully reviewed by the Executive Director and the Director of Finance and Administration. Do we have any discussion on this motion to refer? Hearing none, we can move into voting procedure. We can just do this by unanimous consent. Are there any opposed to referring this motion? Hearing no opposition, that motion has now been referred back to the Human Resources Subcommittee. We're playing a bit of hot potato with it.
I apologize.
That's perfectly fine. And how I have managed to close my agenda. That's perfect. Anyway, moving on to... Is it adjournment?
Wait, potential new.
Go ahead, Director Harris.
that we received from President Soikos-Satiri over text?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
What's this? Sorry, your audio sort of cut out, Director Harris. What was that? Sorry.
There's a item that we, or I guess a topic of discussion that was sent to both of us over text to potentially entertain by President Soikos-Satiri.
If there's no opposition by members of the board, are we willing to entertain this?
Well, I can explain it first.
Seeing no opposition, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I just mentioned, you know, if we have time or if it's of interest to anybody, you know, if we'd like to sort of discuss. I know we had sort of a big chain going on changes that we might want to make procedurally to the board for, you know, efficiency, productivity, things like that. And I just figured if we want to, we can maybe discuss or formalize some of those changes at today's meeting if that's of interest, or if we have time to do that. Of course, it's up to everyone else on the call today, but that was just, you know, just what I was thinking.
I would, yeah, if I can, if there's no opposition to discussing this, I would happily speak to that. I mean, I've been giving it a lot of thought since Tuesday, and I think perhaps our best option is actually what we've done today, essentially, not having a strict speaking order, but keeping discussion short. So I'm thinking perhaps our best way forward is putting time limits on discussion. So a 15-minute or 20-minute discussion limit per motion, meaning that way, if someone has more than 2 comments, they are permitted to give more than 2 comments. We can have our conversations, which often happen, and are important to happen because you ask a lot of questions. I ask a lot of questions, and so that won't curb discussion or curb participation, but it will curb the length of discussion, so that if discussion is getting particularly long, we cut it off at 15 minutes. And if we feel there's something more we need to discuss, then that would obviously be up to the board to vote and say, yes, we'll extend limits of debate. And obviously there would probably be some sort of speaking order. I mean, I would be, as chair, that would fall to me to give priority to those who haven't yet spoken. And we just simply do it that way. I think that's probably our best way forward. In terms of following, I know there was discussion whether or not we should loosen sort of our following of Robert's rules. That would sort of be, I think, the way we can do it while maintaining some structure. So I know it's very important. It's important to me. I think the way we've done it today as well, making sure we read through the motion and then asking to make sure everyone's clear on the motion. It's very important to me. I know I sat on council last year and we had several motions that were voted on and no one understood what they were. Because no one bothered to speak up and say, hey, hold on, before you read the motion, I need some clarity. So it's very important to me that everybody understands the motion. I don't have any particular desire to read everything twice, so long as I can read it once and everyone understands. So I'm perfectly happy to make that change as well. I think from my end, I think today's meeting actually went quite well. I think it was fairly efficient, and I think everyone had the chance to give their input. So if we would like to, I can spend the next little while sort of formalizing how today's meeting worked, and then we can implement some sort of rules of procedure at the next meeting. If you're happy to sort of leave me to draft something, and I'll just consult. President Lettieri.
Yeah, I'm happy to leave that with you. I'll just, I was kind of taking some notes while we talked. I'll send them in the chat, but sort of like in summary, and a few things that we received via email as well. Just the time limit on discussions. That's a great idea. That, you know, amendments be prepared ahead of the meeting and circulated when possible. And of course, unless it's, you know, time, unless it's really something that's being discussed and brought up right during the meeting. And then agenda items that are submitted incomplete, they'll receive a notice from the vice chair that they won't be accepted for the agenda subcommittee. I think that's a really important thing to do, because I know that some of the agenda items that have been submitted incomplete, that really is where we start, going into more of like a line by line review. And so it just takes up a lot more time. So it's just really enforcing that agenda items are submitted when they're complete and ready to be approved, and really that things that require more analysis be conducted at a subcommittee level, and then reading motions once rather than twice. But so that's sort of the summary that I have over here.
Director Harris.
Yes, Chair Sims, I tend to agree with that. And then on the end of the agenda subcommittee, and especially kind of given the flexibility I have in my chair position with ASC, again, I find that every meeting that goes on, my rules have to become increasingly stricter with the content that's discussed. Again, I am more than happy to reject content from being considered at board meetings based on incompletion, and I'm going to extend that especially to appendices that are not complete as well. We've had a number of motions that have been totally clear and have not had to be changed, but we have also seen, as evident from the key holder policy, numbers of track changes and suggestions and edits that have been made. So I guess I will actually leave it up to the board to determine, with that in mind. There's kind of two options and two schools of thought I can go with. There's number one, I can freeze the motion in time, and so that is, when I say that, I mean 72 hours, including business days, that we receive, before the board meeting that we receive the item. I can make a copy of it, freeze it in time so that any edits aren't actually made, because it's my copy and they don't own it. Or the other option is to just completely reject it altogether. So I guess it's that's the case. Freeze the agenda 1 week before. Is that enough
Director
time?
Zaitlin.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also just, oh, sorry.
Oh, just apologizing to Simon for cutting him off, but go ahead, Director Zaitlin.
Also sorry to Simon then, I'll be quick. I think freezing in time sounds good to me. One thing I want to say also, I know myself, I've sometimes had difficulty accessing the documents, and even if about a week before I request access, I haven't necessarily gotten it before meetings. I think sometimes there's a bit of confusion about who sees those or who owns the documents, and people aren't sure if they're authorized to do that. So if that would be possible, then Director Harris, I quite like the idea of if you have your own copy that's included in the agenda, and then you can just ensure, and if you wouldn't mind using like an incognito browser or something so that it's not like an email that's associated with you, checking that it's openable. I think that would just make it easier for everyone to review documents prior to meetings, which would help make the meetings go more smoothly.
Of course. Chair Sims, can I respond to that?
Yes, you can respond, absolutely.
When I freeze documents in time, it's oftentimes the stuff that's sent in appendices, and I always make sure to set the settings to that everybody can view who has the link. Now, again, the thing that happens with that, and the one thing that we should consider is that when we are freezing something in time, if there are any urgent amendments that have to be made, that won't be reflected in what's brought to the board. So that does reflect on the person who brought forward the motion. But then again, that also does end up entertaining our time for a few minutes. So that's all.
Director O'Leary.
Yes, I just want to echo the comments about accessing the documents. I find that accessing documents through Google Drive is complicated for me. So if we can make copies of the documents and send them by Word or PDF and have them password protected if need be, that would really facilitate the exchange of information. Because I do find myself in the same situation as Dr. Zaitlin sometimes.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Director Harris.
Yeah, Chair Sims, if I can respond to that. I actually did have a conversation with some senior staff about the use of G Suite.
though it is a security issue, I agree it is less secure than Office 365. It is what CUSA has been using for since 2011. So we're kind of in a position in which we have to use Google Drive. I can try to send doc files. I can try to send PDF files. I would just say that honestly, creating the agenda is exhausting enough as it is. It doesn't seem that way, but it really is. It just might add an extra step. So yeah.
If I might just make a mention on the document thing, because I've had the same issue, despite actually having a CUSA affiliated email, I've had the same issue as well. If possible, Director Harris, I know I have seen agendas where essentially what happens is the appendices are included in the agenda, but at the bottom. If that's possible to do, I mean, then if you are going to be making your own copy anyway, you may as well make your own copy and include it in the agenda document, and that way you send one document, no links to any appendices. The appendices are just further down. I'm going
to suggest that that's going to be incredibly labor intensive. And I say this on the fact that even when we were adding in 2 motions into item 8 during the first half of this board meeting, and it ended up shifting everything down. A bunch of things had to be added to the roles of motions. It's a formatting issue on my end. What I can do is I can send out maybe an additional package of drive links, or I can send that's the most I can do. I'm already spending, maybe 7, I know this sounds ridiculous, but 6-7 hours putting together this agenda sometimes. So I don't want to create extra work for myself.
Understandable. Dr. Zaitlin, did you have your hand up?
Oh, no, it's all good. Director Harris addressed the concern I had. Just to respond directly, Director Harris, then if you, since you were the one who suggested freezing motions in time, and I don't want to add extra work for you, would it be okay if you then just copy and paste them all into one single document that only you have control of, and then 2 documents are distributed, the agenda and the appendices as one, and then that way there's less links for us to fuss with, and then it's just right there?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll put I guess the benefit of those who are general members who are looking to possibly access content from the board. I can include either a link to the appendix as we're doing now and include that extra file, or just link to that file. But either way will kind of alleviate that issue on your end about being able to access some of that content. What I have ended up doing with a lot of the appendices that are on the board thing, as I said before, or on the board agenda, as I said before, have been made public. And I'm trying to get into the habit of doing that. A lot of the links that I've been hovering over for the duration of this meeting have said that. For instance, Davin Caratow is the owner, Sam Kilgore is the owner. I will try and make that best practice. If that turns out to be an issue, of course, I can always create a second document. Yeah, we'll see. That's my best answer is we'll see. Whatever makes it less labor intensive for myself. Sounds selfish. It's true.
So I just want to let you know, I've been taking note of all the sort of comments we've made, and great, I'll send this to you after for sort of whatever you produce for the next meeting. But I will just also say that I have mentioned to the Director of Communications and Strategy that we have requested a shared calendar. So we will be working on that as soon as I return from my vacation. So expect a shared calendar by the end of, by early September.
Perfect. If I can make comment, just that I have found agenda packages in previous things actually really helpful. I know our local city council, our local regional district do them both, and they do end up being 300 pages, 700 pages long, but it's awesome to have everything. They actually will have the motion and then the appendix, or the motion and then any supporting information and then the next motion. So all you do is you scroll through the agenda as you go through the meeting. That's something Simon, if you'd like to discuss, because I know I've seen it done, and I don't think it takes them that much time. I'd certainly be willing to have a conversation with you to just figure out, you know, anything I can do to support you in your making the agenda, and
Sure.
then the board.
I guess
Yeah.
the concern, Chair Sims, is just not to stretch your resources thin. I have very limited
Absolutely.
time, and all of you have heard me rant. And again, for sake of saving a rant again, we all have limited time here on the board, and just to respect our time, is to, you know, not add on additional work where there are faster ways of doing things. You know, I work full time. If you have any ideas on kind of ways to make it easier, again, if there are other ways that you can think of, do let me know. In the meantime, I will also say as well, I'm sick and tired of getting unfinished motions or items for discussion. And again, if there's any issues either by senior staff, executives, other directors, that we are not considering or rejecting their items, or their issues for amendment, that are coming to the board, the response to that is, if it was important enough, and it was important enough for us to consider at this board meeting, it would have been finished. End of story. End of discussion. And it would be legible and readable, and we wouldn't be here debating it. So yeah, I guess that's the end of my rant on that. I know it's a little bit incoherent, but it is what it is.
No, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Sarah, I see you put something in the chat. Has that been addressed?
Yeah, so that was just a true response. I didn't want to derail the conversation because there were multiple trains of thought, but Simon mentioned earlier, and now it's been brought up again, so that works well, about whether we should be accepting or rejecting motions. I think it's fine for Simon, generally speaking, to use his judgment, because their judgment, as one would assume, like, people will be, hopefully, especially as the year progresses and people get more used to it, they'll be bringing mostly finished things to the board. I would say, to the point of urgent amendments, which was brought up earlier, as to not make excessive work for Director Harris and make them go crazy with urgent amendments, as people will inevitably do that, to have the kind of stock answer of board meetings are public. If you want to make an urgent amendment, we encourage you to attend the board meeting and present your concerns at that time. In which case the board would likely be happy to hear you out, which does have a risk of extending board meetings, but I think other people don't want to sit through the 3 hours of business before their concerns are heard. So I think it's reasonable to ask that if they have an urgent amendment, they're able to speak to it themselves at the meeting.
You know what, Chair Sims, I think that's actually a good way of holding at it, because it's a deterrence more than anything, because we can deter people from, because that is a perverse incentive, is to give them the hold over the appendix, and by doing this, you're creating extra kind of transaction costs and making this a little bit more difficult to just be amending things willy-nilly. I think this is a fair suggestion. 100%.
I would completely agree. I mean, as I've always said, people are very welcome to send in a written submission that I will read. Any director who is unable to attend can do that. Any member of the public can send me a written submission that I will read. And any urgent amendment or any suggested amendment you have, and this goes for all of us, write it down first, and show up to the meeting and have, here's my amendment, here's what I want to say. Obviously, that's impossible if something comes up for discussion, but if you have an amendment that you know you want to make, write it down and say, I have a concern with this, and here's what I think should be changed, and here's the text, and you can send it to whoever's taking minutes at that point, likely Lily, of course, Director Harris in this case, send it, and say, here's the text of the amendment. Send it to me too, so that I can read it, and then that should, again, make that whole process a lot quicker, so that we're not drafting amendments on the fly. I know we did that quite a bit this meeting, the last meeting. Some of that was simply because those things came up, motions to refer. It's unlikely that you're going to, often unlikely that you're going to know about that in advance. But yeah. Perfect. Is there anything else about this?
I guess the only thing is, and this is kind of me enabling you, Chair Sims,
do not be afraid to shut down conversations. Do not be afraid to tell people, for lack of a better word, to shut the hell up. Especially if meetings are going on long, and there are 2 or 3 people talking over one another. I don't think any of us would really be particularly offended, maybe in the case that we are those people, to be told to shut the hell up. Because again, time is very valuable. So feel free to use that. That would be my suggestion. Feel free to use your discretion as the chair more often.
Thank you. I know it's actually a lot easier for me when we're all virtual or all in person. It's a lot easier for me to actually exercise that. It's a lot more difficult, certainly when I'm virtual and half of us are in a room or something. So looking forward to certainly come September when we're all in a room together, because I think it is a little easier to perhaps certainly control if multiple people are talking, because they can actually hear you rather than you just being a voice on the screen. So thank you, but no, I will certainly, so long as the board is all right with it, use my discretion a little more. With that, unless there's any more debate or discussion, I've just lost interest again. So I'd be fairly happy to entertain the motion to adjourn. I don't know if we want to formally, I guess we can simply adjourn to the 14th of November, and then if we have something come up, it sounds likely that we'll need to meet in September again, likely that we'll need to meet perhaps even a second time before November, but for now I believe we can adjourn until the 14th of November, and then just call a meeting if need be. With no opposition, we have a motion to adjourn. Be it resolved that the board adjourns until 7 p.m. on Monday, the 14th of November at Haven, 43 Seneca, or virtually. Hopefully, we'll all be there in person. Moved by President Lettieri, seconded by Director Huggins Charles. Is there any opposition to adjourning this fourth regular CUSA board meeting? Hearing no opposition, I don't even think we have to vote on that. That's a unanimous consent, and we are officially adjourned. Another hour and a half today and 4 hours the other day, making that a 6-hour meeting. Congratulations, everyone. Give yourselves a pat on the back, and we'll see you all in September. Looking forward to meeting any of you I haven't met in person yet, and seeing all of those of you I have met in person again in person. That was extremely convoluted. All that to say, have a wonderful remainder of your summer, everyone, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you, everyone.
weekend.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. All right, just gotta stop the recording, I guess.
Yes, hold on. Okay.